I'm Sasha Stefanovic, former Purdue men's basketball guard, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? We are back and better than ever. I am your host, Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me, as always, is my guy, Kraig Bowers. And beneath us is the man, the myth, the legend, Bobby Buckets Riddell makes his return to Boilers in the Stands. We haven't seen you, it feels like, in ages, even though you always come on whenever we ask and very gracious with your time. How you doing tonight, Bobby?
I'm doing awesome. Thanks for having me on. It's been too long.
Yeah, and we'll get into a lot of stuff. We definitely want to pick your brain about some of the different things going on tonight. Kraig, you got any thoughts here before we bring on our special guest?
No, I think we should jump right into it and get Jared on here and get some of his thoughts about the season and move on from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Please hit that like button, subscribe to our YouTube page. We appreciate all the support. Without further ado, he is a former guard for Purdue men's basketball and current assistant coach now under Matt Painter. Joining the show is Jared Wulbrun for the first time here on Boilers in the Stands. How you doing tonight, Jared?
Doing well. Appreciate you guys having me on.
Oh, we appreciate you coming on. When we had Jared Harder on, the former, Purdue men's basketball manager, you reached out and we're like, hey, I'd love to come on sometime. And we're always very flattered by that because, we have kind of ingratiated ourselves. Certainly me, I know Kraig's been around this program for a long time, but for me, for the last 5 years, just trying to get to know some different people. Obviously, Bobby got the first harassment treatment of anyone here at the Boilers program, but it's cool to get to know different people. Obviously, you were good friends with Sasha Stefanovic. Coming up through the years, you guys were, you both graduated last year. Celebrated your senior day, beating IU last year was a lot of fun to watch. Getting into it, what has this been like for you, your journey through this program with Matt Painter as a player and now as a coach?
It's been everything I probably could have ever dreamt it to be honest with you. I started my first year of college. I played Division III ball at Cal Lutheran University in Southern California. And if you had told me then that I would have transferred and gone to Purdue and finished at the top of the Big Ten multiple years and made a couple NCAA tournaments, and now I have the pleasure of being able to work for Coach Painter as a graduate assistant, probably would have told you were crazy. So I've gotten everything I could out of it and still am doing so. I love it. Everyone in this program has been so great to me, and They treat everyone with respect, and it's really been such an enjoyable experience being able to consider myself a Purdue Boilermaker.
Now your dad is the head coach for University of Denver. Jeff, leading the way out there. So what is that like for you, learning through Matt Painter, but also being, the son of a head coach for another college basketball program?
Yeah, being raised in a basketball family, the foundation of my basketball knowledge started from a really young age. He was a high school coach in Illinois growing up, and then when I was going into middle school, he got back into the college basketball game, and I moved with my family throughout my dad's jobs from Illinois to Virginia, Alabama, California, and now him and my mom live in Colorado and Denver. So I've really had a lot of different basketball experiences. I've put my dad at the top of that list when it comes to coaches that I admire and respect. And, Coach Painter's right up there with him. Two people that I think really want to shape the men that they coach. They just care about the guys more as people than they do as players first and foremost. And I kind of pride myself on doing the same. And both of them have been really influential in me, obviously getting into coaching here in the last year.
Absolutely. It's definitely interesting. I know being an assistant coach or even a head coach isn't easy. As you mentioned, all the traveling, different teams, as an assistant coach, not everyone has the stability of knowing Matt Painter's above you. Other assistant coaches kind of have to wait in the wings of not knowing whether or not a coach is going to come or go. So interesting that you dove right into it, following your college career.
Yeah, it's kind of what I had always planned to do. You don't really know till you get into it. So I'm learning on the fly still. I'm more than halfway into this first year as a graduate assistant. And, you just pick up things here and there every day from Coach Painter, all our other coaches. PJ Thompson's been really influential for me, and he's been there kind of shoulder to lean on when I need a little more help with, whether it's film or, I have a bunch of different little assignments. So he went through it as a GA when he was done playing professionally. So it's someone I've kind of used to help me through it. And, Tommy was here the year before I was, so I get to use his experiences as well to help build off of. So it's definitely been a fun year so far, and kind of looking forward to the rest of this season and next year as a GA as well.
Yeah. Jared, take us through a little bit of like a day in the life of a grad assistant on the coaching staff during the season. What exactly is it that you guys do for that staff?
It would depend on the day. Normally, as GAs, we have different things we'll do the day after a game. We stat certain things from an offensive and defensive perspective. So Tommy and I will get in the office and we'll work on that. We're responsible for different scouts for different teams. So we help out our assistant coaches with that. On top of that, we work our guys out when they want to. We're kind of at the beck and call. So someone shoots poorly the night before, they may text us that night or the next morning and ask to come get in the gym with us. And we can put them through shooting workout, more off the dribble work, some ball handling. We really cater it to who's looking for what exactly. A lot of what we do is kind of just helping our assistants do their jobs. Starting out as a graduate assistant, you're at the bottom of the totem pole. So you're working your way up as you go through the coaching tree. So it's a lot of kind of beginner work, but as you go through it, you get more advanced in what you're doing, and you have a better hold on it. So you can kind of branch out and help the assistants and video coordinators when they need it. And so I'm able to kind of dip my foot in a lot of different pools, and it's been a really good learning experience for me.
As I throw it to Bobby, big win for Coach Shrews, a former assistant coach under Matt Painter tonight, taking down the Fighting Illini at Penn State. They dropped 93 points on Illinois to take the win. So Illinois takes one on the chin, and this Big Ten picture continues to adjust Going to be an interesting finish down the road. What do you got, Bobby?
Yeah, so my 5th year at school, when I was finishing up my undergrad degree to get enough credit hours to get be able to sit for my CPA license, I was able to do like a student assistant coaching role, not quite as in depth as the grad assistant coaching role you and Tommy are doing now. Mine was much more of a kind of a glorified practice player. Was around, every day in practice and helping out. But I certainly remember thinking the dynamics were kind of, odd, and trying to balance it between like you were a player the previous year and you have all these relationships with these guys that you played with, but now you're trying to transition to more like a coaching role, and just balancing that, like trying to coach them while also like, you're like buds with them too.
Yep.
So what's that been like for you as, you transitioned from being a player last year to now trying to coach these guys?
Yeah, I know the two of us have talked about that a little bit this year, that it's been an adjustment for me. I've used PJ as an example, and when Spike was here last year and Tommy, they all took at least a year between their collegiate playing career and becoming a GA. So they had a little bit of a different perspective, and maybe there wasn't as many guys that were on the teams that they were on that were still here. For me, I was literally on the team less than a year ago. So there are a few here and there that aren't, like Sasha and Travion and Eric, and you have the transfers with the portal now. But it's been an adjustment. It's kind of, I've had to make adjustments on the fly. In the summer, it was definitely a bit weird, just because it was one day I was a player and their teammate, and the next day I'm a GA and I'm technically a coach to them.
Right.
So it took some people probably a little bit to get adjusted, as it did for me. You have guys you're close with. Me and Zach and Ethan are really close. So trying to change their minds a little bit, because mine had to be. I didn't have a choice. They had to adjust a little bit more to it than I did. But I think it's gone really well. I think a big part of being teammates with them and now being a GA is the trust that they have in you. As a teammate, they trusted you to have their back on the court, in practices, off the court, just as a friend. And I want them to still view me as that, as a GA. I want them to come to me when they have an issue, whether it's on the court or off the court. I just want to be there for them. And I feel like as the years gone on, everyone's kind of gotten pretty comfortable with it. And I know I've enjoyed being on this side of things now.
As I mentioned before, knowing your background a little bit through Sasha and how close you guys were, like I said, this was your senior day. I thought it was a great picture and your relationship. And I know Sasha was always really big with the X's and O's and understanding what Matt Painter was trying to do, and you said this is something was in your plan to be, a grad assistant and try to work your way up through the coaching ranks. So last year as a player, was there any, starting to prepare for this moment? You're learning as a player, but are you also starting to, segue into that and in the background kind of learning some of the tricks of the trade that you're now trying to, to put into task?
Yeah, there definitely was. I did really want to enjoy my last year of playing, and I knew I'd have the rest of my life to kind of get into coaching and enjoy that part of it. But I wanted to, enjoy the last year I had playing. That said, I've always watched Coach Paint, Coach Lusk. I mean, we've had Coach Lutz and Shrewsbury who have gone on to become head coaches. I always try and pick up little things that they do, whether it's up in the office now or when it was on the court last year and the years before, interacting with our guys, interacting with the staff, just trying to be a sponge more than anything. And, I think being able to pick little things that each coach does to make up your own coaching style is really important. I don't want to just be a carbon copy of someone. I want to be myself, but use the people around me to kind of increase my knowledge of the game. So I've definitely picked up things here and there. Last year, I know, like I said, Ethan and I have always been pretty close since he's been here. He's always had trust in me. And last year he would come to me during games and we would sit down next to each other and go over what he was thinking, what he was seeing. And obviously as a walk-on last year, I didn't want to tell him too much as I'm not the one out there like he is. But I have a knowledge of the game myself, and when I see something that could help him out, I would mention it to him, and a lot of the times he would utilize that, and it would end up helping the team. So those little things always made me feel like I was doing a little bit of a coaching role, even though I wasn't in one last year, and even more so now. Guys like Ethan, and I've taken Fletcher and Braden kind of under my wing, and created good relationships to them where that trust has been built, and now they do a little bit of the same. So it's been really enjoyable for me to be both a player and try and get into the coaching side, and now being on that permanently and being able to help the guys where I can.
Yeah. To kind of segue off of that question around Fletcher and Braden, you saying you taking them under your wing and whatnot, just from your perspective, watching two freshmen come in like that and be ready to go so early and be major contributors and some games, kind of carry from a scoring standpoint or a leadership standpoint. What jumps out to you about those two guys that's allowed them to step into that role so quickly?
Without a doubt, it's the confidence that both of them have. And I know people have said that already. Those two, you don't come in and produce like they produced if you're not beyond confident in yourself. Braden was out a lot of the summer, so we didn't get to see it as soon as we saw Fletcher's confidence. But man, he stepped in that first day, and he doesn't necessarily have the most muscle on him or the most size, but man, he is beyond confident in his game, and he understands the game at a very high level. Being from a basketball family like I was, you get the benefit of learning from a young age. He gets it at a whole new level, and they just put it to work right away. Two true freshmen stepping right into one of the toughest conferences in the country, and holding their own. It's been really fun for me to watch, and I'm more excited for what they can be than what they are right now. There's a lot more that, as great as they've been, there's always more that they can work on to be even better in the games in the years to come. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, you mentioned that. Now we're getting to the depths of this Big Ten grind, and early in the season they're just lighting it up, and they still are to a large extent. But everyone in the Big Ten. We just saw Illinois go down. Rutgers are in a dogfight right now with Nebraska. That's what the Big Ten is. 2 games, sometimes 3 games a week. And you're coming from high school where you may not have these kind of battles to this level every week, week in and week out. What have you seen from these guys here for Purdue fans who, I think they're just naturally a nervous fan base.
Mm-hmm.
What are you seeing from these guys in the background, and to tell people kind of like, what your expectations are? I know you talk about the big picture with them, but for the rest of this season, will they continue? Do you think they'll have a good chance of being able to continue the play they've shown all season?
Yeah, absolutely. Everyone has growing pains. There's from 2 young players who have as much on their plate as they do. Like they're going to make mistakes. Even the most sound players we have are going to make mistakes. As good as Zach's been, he's made mistakes, but it's being able to bounce back from those mistakes quickly. I think they both have very quick memories. Like they make a mistake, coach may say something to them about it, and they go and correct it in that next play. I think being able to, as cliche as it may sound, having that next play mentality at a young age like these 2 guys have had, like being able to have that so early on, that I think it's really going to help them in the years to come, but especially come March. When those games mean so much and it's win or go home, you have to move on as quickly as possible. If you dwell on a play and then your next one's a bad play because you're thinking about the last one, you're not going to last long in March. So these guys have to have that quick memory, and I think they will, and they'll show it even more down the stretch here.
Absolutely. What do you got, Bobby?
Something I'm always curious about is the perspective of somebody who didn't necessarily grow up like in Indiana or Big Ten country. And, I know you and I have had some brief conversation about this in the past, since like you didn't really know a lot about Purdue before you showed up here, your sophomore year. But what was your perspective of like the Big Ten conference and Purdue, growing up from an outside looking in standpoint versus like now after you've been engulfed in like Purdue in the Big Ten, and
Yeah.
we get court rushed every time we lose a game. Like, what's that been like for you?
Well, you said I had a little bit of experience with Purdue. I had absolutely none. I had never been to Purdue. I've been to Indiana once in my life. It was to go to a Notre Dame game when I was much younger. Yeah, no, I feel that way now. I used to not, but definitely now. So it was a completely new experience for me. Once Coach Payne offered me a spot, I took it, having kind of no idea what I was really getting myself into, and turned out to be probably the best decision I've ever made. The Big Ten in general, growing up in Illinois, I was always an Illinois fan just because that was where I lived. So the teams with D. Brown and Luther Head, Darren Williams, James Augustine, Roger Powell, I remember going to games and watching those guys play and how fun they were to watch. So I knew a little bit. I was really young at that time. I remember vaguely watching a couple Purdue games as I got older here and there, just when they were on TV. I would always, pay attention to Illinois and Michigan State and Michigan, Ohio State, the bigger names when I was growing up. But I really didn't have much of an idea about the conference as a whole. And now, as I've played through it and now coaching into it, I've grown to love it. I love the physicality of the league. I love how every night's a dogfight. From 1 to 14, you're going to get everybody's best shot. It's been quite the experience going from not knowing it. Like myself, I'd never been to really any Big Ten game outside Illinois, and you go to all these games as a player and sold out arenas, like you said, the court's getting stormed on you. You can't really describe it to people that aren't a part of it. Like if you had tried to explain what I was going to experience in my 3 years as a player and now as a GA way beforehand, I probably wouldn't have understood the magnitude of it. Now, having gone through all that, I really appreciate everything that the Big Ten's able to bring to the table night in and night out.
Yeah, you mentioned all those great players for Illinois. Sean Harrington was cold-blooded back then. I remember, a knockdown shooter for that team. When you talk about that, specifically with the court stormings, I wanted to ask you about Matt Painter, but since you brought this up, I want to keep on this, because that is the observation I've made over the last 2 years, and people have made it now here recently too, now that we've had back-to-back weeks where teams have stormed the court to beat Purdue. But I remember telling Sasha a few times last year, because it felt like every team, I think, but one last year stormed the court.
Mm-hmm.
And then that was only because Wisconsin was playing at Mackey. Everybody else, you lost on the road, they were storming the court on you guys. Yep. And every time I tell Sasha, I was like, well, hey, man, think about that. I was like, that's like a term of endearment. Like 4 years ago, I don't think one team in the nation would have thought that highly to rush the court after they beat every team. I was like, he's like, yeah, I don't care. It's like, that's not resonating after a loss as a player. And I get that. But as a fan, on the outside, observing this, how does that feel for you as a player and now as a coach to see? To me, it's elevated the level of expectation of not only the fan base within the Purdue program, but the fan bases outside. I went to work and the guys, they're giving me crap and going, oh, Purdue's starting to slide because they lost one game. It's like, to me, that kind of shows where Purdue, even in the last 5 years, has gone as a program to where everybody in the country kind of expects you guys to win night in and night out. How does that feel for you to be a part of the elevated expectations of this program?
I've said the last 2 years with all these court stormings, you got to be doing something right if they're storming the court on you. So it's a compliment to the team you have that when they beat you, they feel like it's such a big deal. They're going to rush out of the stands and storm the court. So you're doing something right. And that goes to show where this program has gone. I mean, when my first year here, I think we were the year COVID ended, we were 16 and 15, right around there. So now you really have to learn to take those losses, even when those court stormings happen, for face value. For me, when we lost at IU this year, yes, it's IU, that stings more than anything. Face value of it, was they were the number 21 team in the country, and they have a great sold out home fan base. So it's not like you lost a quad 3 game to someone you should beat 99 times out of 100. It was a tough Big Ten game against a rival. Rankings kind of go out the window when you're playing against a rival anyway. So you can't get too caught up in the fact of these teams storming the court and making it a bigger deal than it needs to be. For us, it was a loss against a good team. You just got to find a way to bounce back, take the positives from it. I really felt like we played well in that second half, and we used that to bounce back and get a win right after it. So just not getting too caught up in, all the acts, the court stormings, the social media. Just take it for what it is. It was a tough game. You didn't come out on top. Build off it and go get the next one.
Absolutely.
As you've been around this team, as they've been on this really good run and being ranked number 1 as much as they are, a lot of the players have talked about how together the team is and just hanging out off the court and around the court. I guess from your perspective, is there anything outside of the actual physicality of what they're doing on the court, but just them as a team in general that you think kind of helps set them apart?
They really do it. It's true what they've all said all year. I know David Jenkins has said it multiple times. Like this is the most together group I've seen in my 4 years. I'm jealous I'm not on the team as a part of it, because it's right up my alley, the types of people we have, how they act around one another. They appreciate each other. There's really no selfishness around this group at all. I think that's really hard to come by nowadays with the social media, all the praise certain individuals get. I mean, if anyone was subject to that, it'd be Zach. Zach's been dominant. He's the National Player of the Year candidate. He's probably as humble as anyone I've been around. He goes out, he takes care of his business, and then he's another one of us after that. He doesn't get too caught up in all that, and I think that's a large part of it. Obviously, you have great talents like we've had in the past, but it hasn't always been the most tight-knit group. I think this group has found a way to become that. And I mean, at the beginning of the year, you saw in the rankings, we weren't in them. I don't think anyone thought we would put it together like we had, except for this group. I think that's another part to it. We believed in this group in the summer when we had a handful of guys who weren't even playing because they were injured. And then you just keep building on that belief in yourself. And lo and behold, you've been the number 1 team in the country for over a month and a half throughout the year. And what you've built this whole team on all year has really shown itself and shown its true colors in the past few months.
Carl McNulty in the chat's asking, how is Julia Edie's cooking?
High level. It's high level. She's great in the kitchen.
It looks like Jared Harder's taking full advantage of that too.
He's been there a handful of times.
Definitely. So one thing I wanted to ask was obviously Matt Painter. How did you get on his radar to come to Purdue? And B, now that you're, coaching under him, Ethan Morton talked about, his bag of plays. He didn't realize, how much he got in his bag, as a play caller, because Micah Shrewsbury called all the plays when he was here. And now that he's gone, he was like wondering, well, how's Matt going to do? He didn't realize that Matt's got, an encyclopedia of plays. Yeah. So A, how did you get on his radar to join the Purdue program as a player? And B, how deep are you in this encyclopedia of plays of learning this Matt Painter system?
Well, with him, I know it had been mentioned just from time to time, obviously with my dad being a coach. And at some point it had been talked about that I wanted to. Other people on our staff knew I wanted to. I was on a podcast with Elliot Bloom and Rob Blackman, as they have all the seniors on. I was on it last year, and they had asked about it, and I expressed my interest in wanting to coach. At that time, I had no idea where I was going to be. When the season ended, our GA spots are 2-year deals. So Spike and Tommy, we had just finished up year 1. So in my head all year, this was not an option just based on it was an odd year for me. They were going to have another year. I was going to have to go elsewhere, take a job and do something for another year before I could come back and possibly be here if Coach Payne wanted me to. So I had been working through people I met through my dad's coaching tree, through Payne's coaching tree, people I met from Purdue. It was a job search for me. I was looking to become a graduate assistant at any level I could. Preferably it was Division I, and I had contacts kind of working on my end of things to see if I could get anything lined up. And I had a few feelers here and there, a couple interviews, some emails back and forth, resumes being sent out. And I was actually talking with PJ about it, and he kind of knew where my situation stood. And then he came down one day, and it's probably late April, May, and he asked what was going on, and I told him, and he just said, just hold off for another day or so. And I was like, you can't tell me to hold off without giving me some more information here. And he just said, just trust me on this one, just hold off. And I had set up a meeting with Coach Payne to go over the schools that I was talking to, the coaches I was talking to get his opinion on them, what he thought that may be a good fit for me, if he had any other connections there. And I came away from that meeting kind of in my head, it was okay. Like, I'm moving forward with these options. Hopefully I can get something in the coming weeks. And he called me the next day and he said, hey, coincidentally, an hour after you left my office, Spike came in and told me that he was going to go take a job in Indy, and said, it was perfect timing. The job's yours if you want it. And I was shocked. I had talked with Spike about what I was looking for, and nothing had came from him saying like, hey, I'm thinking about possibly getting out. I know he's enjoying his life post basketball, so it's great. It was great for me and him, I guess, that he ended up leaving, and it worked out for me perfectly. I've been lucky enough to be with Coach Payne now. This is my 4th year, just being around him. And he is easily one of the best people in the business of college basketball. I know. Just he cares about the individuals more than the wins. He cares about the university more than anything. I think that's kind of what our guys buy into as well, is he wants Purdue to be successful, whether it's the cost of your playing time or someone else's. He just wants us to do what we can to better the university. And I think that speaks volumes about who he is as a person.
And how deep are you in the Painter bag as far as this
I'm
encyclopedia playbook?
I'm trying. It took, actually, Tommy and I talked about that today. Just came up in conversation that we both struggled. We were both walk-ons when we got here. We struggled to pick up the plays. It took me, I think I said today, it took me 1.5 years to kind of understand our offense. As a walk-on, you're not normally the one running the offense like our other guys are. So it's a lot of standing there and watching them run it. For me, I know basketball-wise, I learn better when I go through the motions. When I go and run a play, there's a lot better chance I'm going to understand what I'm doing than if I'm standing there on the side watching it. So as the years went on, I was able to hop in reps here and there when guys were hurt or they had other reasons why they weren't in the play, they needed a break. So I would pick up on those opportunities, and I would pick up a play here and there, and it would just slowly build and build and build. And, I feel like I have a really good understanding now of it. I still don't fully understand it. I think it takes years to fully understand it with as many little idiosyncrasies as we have. But I've definitely in a lot better place now than I was when I first got here.
For sure. I can only imagine. It was cool to hear Matt. I asked him a question after one of the games against Penn State, just talking about the chess match between him and Micah Shrewsbury and how they reversed engineered some plays from Coach Shrewsbury when he was in the NBA of stuff that they couldn't stop against other teams. And they said, okay, that's what we want to run here, is the stuff you couldn't stop. And so it's a lot of fun when you listen to Matt Painter's interviews or post-game pressers like digging into his mind, because it is a top level basketball mind, and his delivery of how he explains things for a simpleton like me, even to an extent, can kind of see the light of how his mindset is. Certainly never in regards of understanding how to understand his playbook, but at the same time, it's fun digging into the psychology of Matt Painter, because to me, I think he is the best coach in the country. Obviously, I have some bias there. Go ahead, guys.
All right, I'll go, Jared. The last year's team, unfortunately, we came up like so close on so many of our major goals as far as trying to put some banners up in Mackey. When this team moved forward into the summer, did you feel any sort of sense of like something to prove as far as the guys when they were working out this summer? Like, okay, I know we came up short, but we got still a chunk of guys coming back from last year's team that really want to try to get over the hump this following year.
Yeah, we definitely, I think, had that chip on our shoulder in a sense. I know probably out of all those guys, being able to have Zach have that front court to himself was huge. I think it gives him a lot of confidence knowing that like we're banking on him. We're running our offense through him, whether he's playing well, whether he's struggling, whether he's getting doubled from the high side, doubled from the low side. I think he stepped into a leadership role in the summer. He's more of more like he leads by example more than like Ethan and Mason are more vocal leaders. Zach, Zach means I give Zach all the credit in the world for how he works on his basketball game. He is very regimented in what he does every day with his post hooks. He gets into a routine, and that routine's worked really, really well for him. So our younger guys have seen that. The guards start doing shooting every day after practice, and I'm the one getting him into it, passing to him every day. And I think that's his leadership style, is he leads by example, which has really, trickled down the line with our team. I know Ethan, they each individually kind of had something to prove. Zach wanted to prove he could play a big bulk of minutes and be very productive. Ethan wanted to show he was a first team all defensive player. I think Mason gets dubbed as the glue guy, and he wanted to show he was more than capable of just that. I mean, he's been shooting the lights out lately. Those guys just wanted to build on what they've done the last few years, and I think especially those three kind of being leaders for our group have done that so far.
Yeah. Hey, quick question. Just kind of rapid fire here a little bit. Favorite venue in the Big Ten, not Mackey?
The Rack.
Okay.
Even though we got some bad memories there, that environment's behind Mackey. I think that's the second best environment when it's sold out.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you said rapid fire. I thought
No,
you
I
had
just-
more for him.
It was really rapid fire, Brax. Fast one
shot.
question.
This is a sniper. That's a sniper on the roof question. One shot. We don't want to take up too much more of your time. I'm sure you and Bobby are going to be getting on a plane tomorrow at some point. I'm assuming for College Park. Big game coming up, against Maryland as we, this Big Ten season starts to round third and head home. But you mentioned a little bit of your walk-on stuff, and I know that was something you certainly wanted to touch on. If you were to encourage any player that, obviously being a walk-on, you have to make that decision of, do I play somewhere where I can get some minutes somewhere at a smaller college, or do I want to go play at a big program and make an impact maybe where it isn't seen by the whole fan base, but you're making an impact on the program? What would you say to some players that are, on the fence with that, and what Purdue can offer for those type of players as walk-ons?
For me, I was, like you said, I was able to get the best of both worlds. I really, really wanted to play and get playing time my first year out of high school. So that was how I ended up going the Division III route. And I did. I started the large majority of the year. I was our third leading scorer. I got a lot of looks. To me, it wasn't the college experience I wanted. It was a small commuter school, around 3,000 kids. We had no more than 100 people at most of our games. To me, that wasn't college. I really wanted to get a full college experience, going to a bigger school. I ended up getting the opportunity to come here with Coach Painter, and I mean, it was everything I could have imagined and then some. You have to kind of come to grips with yourself that your playing days and really contributing on the court are a little bit over. I still was able to contribute in a lot of different ways. It just wasn't scoring in games and being involved a whole lot. That said, I wouldn't have traded my experience here for the world. It was great. It was for someone who was a college basketball fan from a little kid to now getting into college basketball coaching. I mean, it was everything I had dreamt of. So individually, it's kind of what you want the most. I wanted that playing time originally. I got it. I realized it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. And luckily for me, with my dad being a coach and just being around the college basketball game, I was able to meet Coach Painter at the right time. They needed someone to fill a role. And, I tried every day to fill that role as best as I could and help our team in any way imaginable. So definitely for someone who's looking to kind of be in that similar situation, low level basketball, or go to a high level and kind of giving up your playing time, it's all individual based. I know guys who I played with who loved their experience at that level. I know guys who were walk-ons and absolutely love being a walk-on. It's all personal preference. For me, I'm able to speak on both, and I really don't have anything bad to say about either of them. For me, it was the perfect mix, and I think it's shaped me to becoming the aspiring coach I want to be.
Well, and speaking of that, and this will be my final question, guys. If you got anything else, you can throw it at him, certainly. But I see Mike in the chat. A couple of the first things he asked are stuff we did cover. I know he came in a little late to the interview as far as understanding from a player's and now a coach's perspective. But his final question is something I'd like to ask you, and that's, how do you want to develop as a coach? You mentioned, it's a little bit of a transition that some of these guys are still your friends currently. So you want to be there for them as an assistant grad. And I think you'll always want to be there for your players as a coach, but at the same time, moving into the deeper future, how do you see yourself in the kind of coach you want to be?
I definitely want to be a combination of the coaches that I've been around. Like I had said earlier, you take little things from each coach. My dad has been a coach for a long time, and he has pillars that he builds his program on. Integrity. He wants his culture built off integrity, loyalty, commitment. A lot of those things that can sometimes be buzzwords around college basketball. I know culture is one of them. I want to incorporate all of those things. I want to incorporate how, for example, Coach Painter runs his offense, how it's very regimented and guys have to run at a certain pace. They need to be where they're supposed to be at certain times in order for everything to run well. Definitely just combining all of that to kind of make my own style. As a player, you take from what you felt, when you were in a shooting slump, the thoughts that were going through your mind, you've been there, so you can try and help someone else get out of a slump like that. If they're missing shots long, okay, we need to put a little bit more arc under it, get under it a little more so it doesn't hit back rim. Small things like that, just little adjustments. Just taking the best from each person you've been around. I think just making it your own. I know that's probably a pretty standard answer when it comes to your own coaching style, but I've had the pleasure to be around some big time college basketball coaches, and I'd be dumb not to take what I've learned from them and incorporate it into what I want to be as a coach.
Well, you're certainly on the right track, and obviously I think you're with the right program. So a good start to your coaching career. Do you guys have anything else for Jared before we cut him loose?
I'm just worried about the flag draped over the lamp in the back. The whole time I've been like, that's gonna catch on fire, and I'm gonna have to yell fire.
Well,
Before
if
this
it does, that's great content for the show. I mean, we don't want to see a boiler flag burn, but at the same time, if there's a bit of a panic moment, we clip it and then it goes viral. It's good content. No, I'm kidding.
It really could be a win-win for all of us.
Well, hey, make sure you set the house on fire. No pun intended. At Maryland, and we'll be rooting you guys on from our house, from our couches, as you guys make the travel that way. So, best of luck here for the rest of the year. This team has been a lot of fun to watch. You guys, as coaches, are a big part of everything that's going on here. So, we really appreciate this perspective coming on tonight, and look forward to the rest of this season, because I think there's some special things ahead for this team. They've shown a lot of poise for a relatively young team. So keep up the great work.
Appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
See you soon, Jared.
All right, Bob.
That is Jared Wulbrun, assistant coach for Purdue men's basketball. I mean, do you call him assistant, or do you say he said assistant grad, but assistant coach, right?
Graduate assistant.
Is probably
well, we're going to call him assistant coach.
If you want to upgrade to assistant, I'm sure he's cool with it.
Well, it's on the show,
His
on the
paycheck's
banner,
coming out
so
good.
that means it's what he is. So we appreciate him joining here today. So, I got to real quick before because I don't want to take up too much of your time, Bobby, but we certainly have a few questions for you, more of the critical eye of things that have transpired here on Sunday, and some questions here going forward that we didn't want to put Jared on the spot as, a current coach of the team, and you being the analyst that you are now, we can drill you a little bit harder of things that happen. But before I do, I want to give a shout out to our sponsors really quickly. So that would be Fanbags Cornhole. And I got to get my reads out in order to do that. And when I
logo
do,
means business right there.
Oh, we are doing it. You're going to be getting some money, Bobby. That Jared Wulbrun interview was brought to you by Fanbags Cornhole, Chicago's official supplier of professional cornhole boards and bags. Choose from any of their officially licensed designs, or have my boy Brian design a custom set using anything from a selfie to your company's logo. Visit www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS to get 10% off your entire order. That's www.fanbagscornhole.com and use the promo code BRAGS for 10% off. Step up your game with Fanbags Cornhole. There it is, our Fanbags Cornhole. Also want to give a shout out to our guys at Mad Mushroom. We've just started a partnership with them, and on Monday was the start of our new deal that you can get the Boilers in the Stands deal from Mad Mushroom when you order any order from them at any of their locations. If you use the promo code BITS, aka Boilers in the Stands or Brags in the Stands, whatever you want to think, 15% off any order you make. So I know it says starting tomorrow, but it really means today, because that started on Monday. We use this graphic here for the game on Sunday. So now I've fixed it. Use for 15% off any order. Use the promo code BITS, and you'll help give us a shout out. And we're always shouting out our guys at Mad Mushroom, some of the best cheese sticks in the game and some of the best pizza in the game. Head over to Mad Mushroom. You know where they're at. Go get some pizza. 15% off. Use the promo code BITS. So there it is. I had to get through some of the stuff. We're trying to get Bobby paid here, Carl. It's not about getting me. Bobby's been coming on this show now for like 3 years. He hasn't seen a red cent from us. So we're trying to get the superstar of the show paid. What do you
I'll
think?
promote those cheese sticks all day long. In that.
We can hook you up with some cheese
Hey.
sticks. I'm certain of that.
Greg, my Mad Mushrooms order, Jacqueline brought my Mad Mushrooms order home 10 minutes before the show started. I've been staring at a full plate of pizza and cheese sticks since the show started, just enviously eyeing them the entire time.
And then I see Mike says,
That's
can we get a Bragg's face on some bags? Bragg's bag, fan bags. I don't know if my head would fit on a bag. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. So like I said, Bobby, we wanted to pick your brain about some things because, there's been some things that have kind of opened up after the Northwestern loss, which was a tough one. I mean, certainly was a dogfight. And I think that's probably putting it mildly as far as what transpired in that game. We have people in the chat still talking about some of the calls and things of that nature. We addressed it. We brought on our ref correspondent that we have now on the post-game show, Isaiah, who does a really good job of explaining things and calming our nerves and kind of giving a good perspective in that regard. But at the same time, like I said, some things have transpired of some new revelations of this game, one of which being this moment with 12 seconds to go in the game where Fletcher Lawyer, where you see in the top of this picture, there's 12 seconds to go. Purdue is trying to inbounds. This is when they throw it all the way across the court to Zach Edie. It ends up being a turnover in the end of the game, and then they rush the court. But prior to the inbounds, the head coach for the Northwestern Wildcats, Chris Collins, is grabbing. You can see in this picture, for those of you that are watching on the video stream, he's grabbing Fletcher Lawyer's arm to tell Chase Audige, it looks like, hey, you got to come over and guard this guy. That's fine. You want to tell your player on your team, get over and guard this guy. But grabbing another player from the other team is something I've never seen a coach do before. And I get he was just probably lost in the moment, really excited. They're up 12 seconds to go. The game's about over. But you cannot grab a player from the other team. I'm assuming you've probably seen the video. We're showing the picture here. When you see that, what are you thinking? Because I know that was like right there. Did you see that in the moment that it happened? I know a lot of chaos was ensuing at that moment, but what do you think when you see that?
Right. Yeah. No, I didn't see it. I did not see it live. The clip's not great, obviously. I mean, I think you kind of hit it on the head there. He lost his mind there for a second, obviously, and, kind of panicked, seeing Fletcher open, Chase Audige not guarding him that late in the game. The game, it was going to be tough for us to come back at that point, certainly down 6 or 12 seconds to go. But yeah, he kind of, I believe, just panics and reaches out and grabs Fletcher to tell Chase, like, dude, you got to come over and guard this guy. And obviously that was crossing a line. You can't be grabbing the opposing players when they're on the floor. And to your point, I think he just kind of lost his head there for a second and didn't really realize, the implications of what he's doing. I think it's, for all intents and purposes, not a huge deal, just because, I don't think there was anything malicious behind it. I think he just kind of was like, dude, come guard this guy. What are you doing, Chase? What are you doing? And his kind of just instincts took over. He's a former player, so he was thinking he was out on the court for a second. I think
there were some people going out the Duke way, so to speak.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it can't happen. I don't know what the rule would be on that, like if it's a technical.
It has to be a technical foul, in my opinion. I don't know, but there's no way it's not, in my opinion, because that's a slippery slope if coaches are allowed to touch the other players. I mean, you think of the football coach for Ohio State, the legendary football coach. Didn't he get in trouble once when a player was coming down the sidelines?
Yeah, he tripped him or something, right?
And he tripped him or something. I mean, that's totally different, obviously. But at the same time, Fletcher kind of rips his arm off, like, what are you doing? And kind of gives him a look and then gets to the play. But if Fletcher had reacted even more dramatically, either A, got in the coach's face for touching him, or B, as Ant Wright suggested, act like he had a bear rip his arm off and just start flailing and freaking out, then you force the refs to review it, and potentially it could have been a technical foul where it's 2 shots in ball for Purdue. A lot of things would have had to transpire in that moment for Purdue to flip the script there. They were down 6 with 2 shots and ball, and now all of a sudden Painter can get in his bag of tricks, kind of like what they did with Ohio State, where they created a trap and got a turnover, and before you know it, I think that was Ohio State, and then they pulled a win out of their hat. I don't know. Regardless, that was certainly an interesting one, and I know Kraig wanted to ask about the other kind of moment there at the end to kind of get some clarification as far as what was happening. We thought about asking Jared, but we want to put you on the spot and not Jared so he can stay out of trouble.
Thanks.
Well, I always get nervous in court storm situations, and we spoke about this in the post game a little bit. I referenced some things that have happened in professional sporting events where players actually got injured from people rushing onto the court, whether it's tennis court, basketball court, whatever it may be. We've seen court storms where our players have easily been able to get off the court. It did not look like Northwestern had security set up or people around the court to make sure Purdue kind of easily got off. And some players kind of got trapped up in it. I guess, how much do you, as a player, is it talked about it all ahead of time? How much do you worry about it if you're that coaching staff of like, I got to get my guys off, make sure nobody gets hurt, make sure they're, nothing transpires or that type of thing.
And before you answer that, I'm going to play the video to give people that are watching and not just listening through audio from a fan in the stands perspective of when the court stormed against at Northwestern for Purdue players that were kind of stuck in the middle of this scrum. And there it is. You can see Zach Edie, Mason Gillis, Fletcher Lawyer, and Brandon Newman literally get engulfed in this wave.
And they have people around the court on the sides, but not on the ends where the fans rush from. If you watch that video, like they're on the two, longer sides of the court.
Let's watch
it
on the opposite ends. Let's watch it one more time.
Yeah. I mean, those baseline student sections had super easy access. Like there's some places where, like at Assembly Hall, for instance, where there's a little bit more difficult to get down to the court at times, depending on where the location is of where the students are. But yeah, there was definitely nothing in place there. And definitely, I don't know if that's the first court storm that's happened at that new Welsh Ryan Arena. It probably is.
The last time, I guess, was 2017 when they beat Michigan State. Mark Harmon, who works on the radio team for WGN, who also does CHGO Bears with me, he came on the show and said that was the last time. So I don't know how old.
Yeah, I think that would have been at the old arena. Okay. But so they definitely probably should have had that discussion, considering the number one team in the country was coming to their building, that if they did, in fact, win, how they were going to handle that. Maybe they didn't think they were going to win. I don't know. But at Indiana, for instance, they had rushed the court on us the year before, so they had some recent experience of it. They had people like run out immediately with like some yellow tape that shielded at least they shielded the lines, the handshake lines away from the oncoming students who were rushing. I don't remember if our players were stuck out on the floor with those IU students when they rushed on, if that happened at all. Or if
I think 2 years ago when they lost with Jaden Ivey, like they got caught a little more. And then this year it felt like they were more prepared. The storming was a little slower for IU. It felt like on the telecast. I was there in person 2 years ago. Yeah. So it maybe felt more chaotic because I was there as opposed to just watching it. But this year it felt like they formed a wall for the handshake line, and then the student section stormed the opposite side of that wall. I mean, you see this court stormings, and you see court stormings all over the country. This happens all the time. I think it's a great part of college basketball culture. I would hate to see it gone, but at the same time, it is a dangerous game we're all playing by allowing this to happen, because anything can happen. And there's a video going around that I'm not sharing on here, but there's a video going around where Mason is trying to get his way out of the scrum, and he is being, he's using his force, and he's a strong guy, and it doesn't look great in the video, but at the same time, he's defending himself in a lot of ways, and Brandon Newman is right behind him, and they're getting caught up in this with fans that are, who knows what they're saying to their face or whatever. So it's just a tricky situation when it comes to that, because you just don't know what a fan will do. We've also seen players like Garrett Blunt got suspended for a year for decking a fan walking off, the first game of the year when Oregon lost. So we've seen this happen before. God forbid anytime a fan takes it upon himself to do something worse to a player that they don't like. I mean, Zach Edie, I saw a coach come out and grab Zach and kind of lead him out of the scrum, because Zach would be like public enemy number one to go mess with, right? If you're an opposing fan base. So, I just think we're almost to a point where something really bad is inevitably going to happen. And I hate saying that, because I like court stormings. As much crap as I gave IU fans for storming the court, that had to do with the rivalry lens, like we were talking about with Jared, like how much IU respects Purdue now to storm the court on them. But I don't mind any school storming the court. I'd prefer Purdue fans not to, just because I want them to do the we've been there before mentality. Old traditionalist me over here thinks that that's the cooler thing to do. I mean, you saw it with Gonzaga. I think it was St. Mary's. They beat them, and they chose to not storm the court because they were like, no, we're supposed to beat you. And I kind of like that. That's the new – I think that should be how some schools approach this now, is be above it, and act like you're supposed to be there. But I understand kids want to have fun, and I'm not trying to take that away from them by any means. But what we saw there, you cannot avoid what could happen in these situations.
Yeah, I mean, as a guy who's a fan of court storming, I think, like you said, it's great for the most part. If you're the number one team in the country, I think it's obligation you court storm, and that's happened to us twice this year. We've been the number one team in the country and lost, and they court storm. So, to me, that's kind of obligation as far as court storming rules. If you beat the number one team in the country, you got to court storm. That being said, I had a pretty good look at some of the stuff that was happening with our players at the Northwestern game. Kind of took place right in front of me, and it really was probably very close to, unfortunately, things getting really out of hand. So I'm glad, it didn't. I think, the most of it, of course, was just some pushing and shoving, but it was really close to it being worse because of those guys just getting engulfed so quickly. And those students are stampeding on top of you. And so you're obviously a little bit scared for your own well-being. And then you're, of course, disappointed and mad because you lost. So you're not it's just a bad combination of things that can happen. And so I'm thankful nothing extremely bad happened against Northwestern, but I'm with you. There's got to be something, logistically done across the country to try to allow these players to get off the floor in a timely fashion.
Yeah, I mean, like this guy says, watching through the Boiler Diehards Facebook group, he says tons of cops at all the games. They protect coaches at the end of football games. You'll see that when the game is over, whether fans storm the field or not in college, that there's always a police officer right next to the coach walking up as they do the handshake coming across the field with the other coach. And I agree that I think that's something that could happen. I mean, it's, you just hope for the best, but at the same time, you got to plan for the worst if you're a university and a staff that's preparing for these moments. So, I think it is of the utmost important. And then there's also, when it comes to crowds and a stampede like that, there's trampling that could take place, not just with players, other students. You fall. If you happen to trip when all those fans are coming like that, they can't see that you're underneath the pile. So there is a safety concern. I mean, you even saw it in the Purdue women's basketball game when the fans were lining up outside the stadium. I was reading on Twitter that it got scary for the fans because they all started to push to the door to get their best seat for the paint crew. And I'm reading this as it was going on, happening live.
I believe 2 people got injured in that.
And that's not because people are being, it's when it's a crowd, there's nothing you can do to stop that. It's an avalanche. It's not like people are being inconsiderate. It's just what happens when there's a panic in a crowd. I mean, there's this 30 for 30 documentary of in soccer across the seas somewhere in England where these people got smashed because so many people came into one area, congested it, and they all got kind of entangled with each other. So, I don't want to, we're not trying to like make this like this huge thing, but at the same time, I'm just trying to point out that there is safety risks that need to be considered here. And you're putting the players in a tough spot. They've just lost a game, so, it is what it is, but Purdue's having a lot of court stormings happening to them. So, as we mentioned, so it is something that I think schools need to be ready for. But
I was a part of the one recent court storm that happened. Well, it's not that recent now, I guess. I'm getting kind of old, but I was a part of the most recent court storm at Mackey my junior year. We beat Wisconsin, and the fans rushed the court at Mackey. And obviously, it was from a positive standpoint for me as a Purdue player. But like, I'll never forget. I run off the bench to celebrate with the guys that were on the floor running off, and like Robbie was one of my good buddies, so I'm like running to him, and I'll never forget. Like, I jump up and like hug him, and then I look around him. I can't look over him, unfortunately. Look around him. And it's just a stampede of the Purdue students. And it was obviously like awesome to see, but it was also like terrifying at the same time. It was like it really, I mean, it is there. It's an avalanche, as you said earlier. Like, so when you're the beneficiary of it, it's like a cool avalanche. But if you're an opposing player, I could see it being.
And let me just say this. John Martinez in the chat talking real tough around here, saying ought to worry more about not choking instead of the crowd. Listen, John, this is something that we are going to touch on here today because there were some factors that did happen to the players on this team. So you can cut the fake tough guy routine in the chat. We are going to talk about what happened with the team, and they did blow it. We're not trying to take away from that. I said it on the postgame show. They beat themselves just as much as the refs had a hand in it. They beat themselves too. So we're not excuse making, but it is something that needs to be addressed. And we aren't going to hide from the conversation. So forgive us for having this conversation. Maybe it is a little too drawn out, but I don't need the fake tough guy routine in the chat. But appreciate you tuning in for sure. Go ahead, Kraig.
Oh man, that was like Matt Painter in his radio show when he's like, "Good question." At the end, when you can tell he's just like dying to be done with it. Bobby, I've got a layup for you here. Okay. After all of that, this is a layup question, I promise you. But somebody was sending me statistics. There's certain schools that are Under Armour schools, certain schools that are Nike schools, whatever. Certain schools play with Under Armour balls. And David Kovich sent me some statistics of schools
the same stuff.
Don't normally play with Under Armour balls, going to schools that do, and the difference in shooting percentages and that type of stuff. As a player, can you notice, is there a noticeable difference when you grab an Under Armour ball, when you grab a Nike ball, grab a Wilson ball, whatever it is?
Yeah, so the Under Armour schools used to have their own Under Armour ball, but they now use the Wilson ball.
Oh, so he was full of it then.
No, I mean, no, his stuff that he sent me said Wilson. It didn't say Under Armour, but he might have said Under Armour school, but they do use Wilson.
So what ball do we use?
So we use Nike. The Adidas schools use Adidas. The Under Armour schools used to use Under Armour, but they now transitioned to using Wilson. So like Northwestern uses their Under Armour school. They used Wilson. Maryland is an Under Armour school. They're going to be using Wilson. So to your question, though, is there a difference in the feel between, for instance, the Nike ball or the Wilson ball or the Adidas ball? Those are the three balls we've used this year. And there is. Honestly, there's a substantial difference, in my opinion, between like the Nike ball and the Wilson ball. The Nike ball and the Adidas ball are a little bit closer, but there definitely is a difference in feel. The Wilson ball, it's a newer ball. The newest release came out last year. It had that new brighter orange color that they were using in the NCAA tournament. It's interesting. It's funny because I was just having the same conversation with people because I got that same info from Davidkovich as well. And it's such a different feel from ball to ball that I feel like it just has to play a part sometimes in some of the performances of these teams. And certainly the numbers and percentages for us this year, and there's pretty small sample size with the Wilson ball, but our Wilson percentage in the 2 games we play with it was the Davidson game and now the Northwestern game, and the percentages are worse than they were with the Nike ball, which is our best percentage, and then the Adidas ball's in the middle. And I think we only used the Adidas ball at Indiana, and we didn't shoot it terribly there, but didn't shoot it great either. And then the Wilson ball was used for Davis Northwestern. That's our worst percentages. And the Wilson ball, like the Nike ball to me and the Adidas ball to some degree, they feel like a normal indoor basketball, just with the way it's got like a soft leather feel to it, but it's also got some grippiness to it. Whereas like the Wilson ball to me now feels like kind of, if anyone's ever played with one of those indoor outdoor balls that can supposedly be used for either surface, it's generally got that like really tacky, grippy feel to it, kind of spongy. And some people might like that, of course, for someone who, always played with like the Wilson Evolution in high school and then the Nike ball at Purdue all the time. It doesn't feel like that ball that much to me. Our team practices with whatever ball we're going to use for the couple practices they have before that game. So like for the Northwestern game, we would have practiced with the Wilson balls for the 2 practices leading up to the Northwestern game. We would have used them at the shoot around at Welsh Ryan Arena. And so you try to get as many shots up really quick, but Indiana, for instance, they have like some pretty drastic home road splits with their shooting. They shoot a lot better at home. Well, they use the Adidas ball all summer when they train, when they practice all preseason, all their home games, and they shoot well with it at home. And obviously there's like other factors as far as like you're used to the shooting background and things of that nature at home. But then on the road, they never get to play with an Adidas ball on the road, basically, because there's not very many Adidas schools, certainly not in the Big Ten. And so to me, it's kind of not a huge surprise that their shooting splits are worse on the road. And that I think that probably plays a factor as you play with a different ball. Like the NBA uses the same ball for every game.
That's what I was going to say. How in 2023 can we still not have a standard ball across
like in the Big Ten tournament?
Because it's a sponsorship thing, right? I mean,
I get that, but still, that's ridiculous.
Like the Big Ten tournament last year selected the Spalding ball to be used, and it looks kind of close to the Adidas ball and the Nike ball as far as color and stuff. But we chose as a Big Ten conference to use a different ball in our Big Ten tournament than the one that was going to be used in the NCAA tournament. When I think we technically could probably choose the same ball if we wanted. I don't know. I'm not behind any of that decision making, but it seems odd to me that we would like tell our teams when 8 or 9 of these teams that are going to play in the Big Ten tournament are going to advance the NCAA tournament. It seems odd to me that we would have them play with a different ball than the ball they're going to play a week from then in the biggest tournament of the year.
I'd be wanting to play with the ball that they're going to play in the March Madness tournament all season long.
Correct. Right. Yeah. That's what you would prefer to have. Like if
the
you
NBA, they all have
X,
the NBA has the same ball.
Random other golf ball in like the biggest tournament of the year. Like that's why they always do like in the Ryder Cup when they have those, alternate shot events or I think it's the alternate shot. They always like have that big debate. Like if there's 2 guys on the same team, like, hey, you play the Pro V1X, but then I play Bridgestone. They have that debate, like which ball they're going to use because it's obviously a different feel and different reaction and all that stuff. And so as a guy who prides himself as being a shooter, there's, and I mess around with these shoot arounds and I shoot around a little bit. Like I can tell the difference in these balls. And so like you can't tell me the guys that are playing with them don't feel the difference too. And obviously the better shooter you are, you'll shoot better with any ball. You'll hand you a beach ball and you would shoot better than a guy who's a bad shooter, of course. But for someone who prides himself when you shoot the basketball on feel and how the ball comes off your hand, to be not using a universal ball or the same ball that you practice with all year round or play with most games seems, silly to me. Like, especially considering NBA players, like they use the same ball year round. And guess what? They're also like way more talented than the college guys as a whole.
Right.
And guess what? The shot making is incredible and better at the NBA level because 1, they're more talented, but 2, also probably because they use the same ball in every game and practice with it. Whereas in college, we don't have as much talent, yet we tell our guys to like play with different balls from game to game.
Yeah, no, it only makes sense to me to have the same ball. As we said, I understand the money is the reason they don't. Blake Widmer asks in the chat, do you know what ball will be used in the NCAA tournament this year?
It should be Wilson again, I would presume.
Okay. So, all right. Outside of the we don't, like I said, only a little bit longer because I understand you got a late night. We appreciate you spending your Valentine's Day with the loves of your life, me and Kraig.
Got my wife some flowers this morning, some chocolate, and I think, and she was watching a little Last of Us. I'd already got through the latest episode on HBO, so she was catching up. So I think she was fully satisfied.
Okay, all right, good. Because we certainly don't. We know we always appreciate how gracious you are with your time with us, but I don't want to push it ever with you. And I know you got a long road trip, to Maryland and back.
I've never been to Maryland. I've never been to Maryland. They joined the Big Ten, of course, after I left, and we didn't play there last year. So I'm stoked to check it out. I've heard, you guys asked Jared what his favorite arena was, and he said Rutgers besides Mackey. And Tommy Luce says his favorite is Maryland's arena.
It's College Park.
Because he was on the team when they had some of those big games, like when Carson hit the game-winning free throw late in one of those exciting finishes at Maryland, and he said the crowd was crazy. So we might actually get an advantage because we play at 6:30 on a Thursday. Traffic in that Washington, D.C., Maryland area, I guess, is pretty crazy. So maybe we'll luck out and it won't be like as hostile a crowd as it could be.
I doubt it.
We are ranked highly, of course, and they're playing well as of late. So I would expect.
Well, let's talk about it. I mean, Purdue's lost 2 or 3 now. Every team in the Big Ten, there's been a lot of parity, I think, also known as, some average basketball being played. I mean, it's a dogfight, but it hasn't been the Big Ten as far as top heavy that we're used to seeing. It's Purdue, and then everyone else kind of taking turns losing. You saw it again tonight. As good as Illinois has been here lately, they lose to Penn State on the road. They were 0-2 to Penn State this year, who Penn State may not make the tournament. Unfortunately, I think Purdue fans side root for Micah Shrewsbury in that regard. But at the same time, I just think it's been average basketball across the board, and some teams trying to find their way to that second spot. Rutgers for a minute, then Illinois started to climb up there. Now Northwestern's making this crazy run. Indiana has certainly seemed to be this team that's on the rise and looming here, just like 10 days away or so from the rematch at Mackey Arena. But let's talk about this matchup against Maryland. I mean, Purdue's lost 2 or 3. They've turned the ball over a lot here in the last 3 games. I think like 41 turnovers or something over the last 3 games. How do they get this stuff cleaned up and get back on the right track, as far as, the consistent winning that I think Purdue fans are starting to get spoiled with?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the turnovers over the last 3 games have certainly been a major problem. There's no question about that because, game in, game out, even though Northwestern, we didn't dominate the glass as much as we have majority of the Big Ten season. For the most part, game in, game out, we're dominating the rebounding margin by a substantial amount. I think our rebounding margin in Big Ten play was a positive 12 going into that Northwestern game. So, by turning it over as much as we have, we're negating to some degree the rebounding advantage that we have game in, game out. And so that's just reducing our margin for error, of course. And not only with the turnovers do you not get a shot attempt and not give yourself a chance to utilize more of that rebounding prowess with our offensive rebounding ability, you're not able to set our defense on the other end, and we're giving up, layups and dunks and open threes. Or we're getting in foul trouble, allowing a team to get in the bonus and things of that nature. And so with how much better our half-court defense has been this year to go along with our rebounding advantage, those turnovers are just extra killer from so many vantage points. So, we were doing a better job this year, I felt like, compared to last year with the turnovers there for a while. It still wasn't perfect, but it was better than last year because the turnovers were a big Achilles heel of last year's team too. But then, these last 3 games now, we've all of a sudden jumped into, from a Big Ten games only standpoint, we have the second worst turnovers per game. And we have the second worst turnover margin because we're not a team that does create a whole lot of turnovers on the defense end, even though we're extremely solid on that end. We don't allow very many second chance opportunities. We don't foul very much on defense, but we don't create a lot of turnovers necessarily. We're more of a solid positional defense. So now that we're second to last in turnover margin and second to last in turnovers per game in Big Ten play, that's not good. That's pretty startling considering we're, the top team in the league by a couple games. So have to absolutely get that rectified. And Maryland, is a team that is not maybe the ideal opponent to play to try to rectify that, just the way they are long and athletic on the perimeter, the way they pressure full court at times. They fall back into that matchup zone that they do a nice job, pushing guys off and really, denying passing lanes and just kind of making you get stagnant a little bit. So the good news is we've played them already. And so we can hopefully have, kind of an idea going into it. We lose against Indiana, we lose against Rutgers, we lose against Northwestern. All three of those teams play a physical brand of basketball on the perimeter where they really pressure, deny passing lanes, things of that nature. And that was the first time playing all those teams. And, they obviously all had some level of success as far as slowing us down and making us turn the ball over. So maybe now that we can play a team for a second time that's that way, we can be more prepared both physically and mentally as far as the guys on the floor knowing what to expect. And hopefully that will allow better execution and better ball security.
Yeah. And I, looking at that and looking ahead, really we've got 3 teams left on the schedule that have some ability to disrupt our offense from a defensive standpoint with some length on the perimeter, having to face IU again, playing against Illinois and Maryland. So obviously that's an area of focus that's going to have to be cleaned up. I was really shocked. I know the turnovers were too much. A couple of them were kind of right at the very end of the game in that game against Northwestern. But I was shocked at the lack of the rebounding margin. This team's had a big rebounding margin on most teams. And going into that game, and maybe I just hadn't watched Northwestern enough, but going into that game, I thought, well, that's a team we're going to be plus 15 on type of team. Did that surprise you? Because we've beat some teams with 16 turnovers this year. We beat West Virginia with 18 turnovers. In my mind, I was like, well, normal rebounding margin, they still probably pull this game out.
Sure.
Did that shock you? And if so, what did you see where we didn't really excel from the rebounding front against them?
Yeah, that's a good question because you're right. I would have thought we would have, decisively won the rebounding margin as well. And against Iowa, we turn it over a bunch, but we win by double figures because we win the rebounding margin by 20, I think it was. So I would have expected a larger rebounding margin as well. And now I'm trying to think back through the game and why we didn't necessarily. And I can't really, put my finger on it. We obviously shot really poorly from 3, particularly the last, 30 minutes of that game kind of or so. And a lot of times long rebound, missed threes lead to long rebounds and the offensive team gets a lot of those. Maybe for whatever reason, this game, the bounces just didn't go our way, right? I guess sometimes that happens because I don't feel like looking back that Northwestern was overpowering us or being more physical on the glass than we were necessarily. But they definitely got some, especially in the first half, they got a couple of those where they miss a little bunny and then it just kind of comes right back to them and they're able to get it and stick it back in really quick. Those are obviously opportunistic. I would just say, this isn't really a great answer, but I would just say it might have just been one of those things where the bounces just didn't really go our way that game.
Yeah. Painter talked about in the radio show a little bit and after the game about those officials in that game not being guys who normally work Big Ten games, and none of those had gotten to officiate Zach before. Which, listening to it, I was like, okay, well, maybe that explains some of the reason why I don't want to say miss some calls, but things were called a little bit differently. But then when I think about March and I apply that same thing as to there's going to be guys who officiate Zach who haven't before. Now, obviously, we played some non-conference games where things went completely a different way in that MTE event earlier in the year and that type of thing. In the NCAA tournament, just because of the way it's spaced out and the officials are getting ready, do they have more time to scout and kind of do their study to understand this is, this is what's happening. And when
Sure.
Zach's 7'4", 290, this is what a guy bouncing off him is going to look like, or a shove in the back. Even though he only moves a couple inches, that's still a shove in the back type of thing.
Sure. No, I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I just look back to the NCAA tournament last year as kind of a clear example of how different officiating can be game to game and different officials. And granted, every game's different to some degree, and not every game has the same type of fouls or whatever. But like we played Texas in the second round last year, and we shoot a zillion free throws and get fouled a bunch. And I feel like Texas plays a relatively physical brand of basketball, pretty athletic team. And then we play St. Peter's in Sweet 16, and we don't shoot that many free throws, and they play a very physical brand of basketball with us. And so you're kind of like, that feels like it's two very similar teams as far as physicality and style. Obviously, we're the same team in how we play. We throw the ball inside a lot. Jaden drove the ball a lot. And yet you have two completely different ways the game was officiated. One that worked very well in our favor. We shot a bunch of free throws against Texas and win. And then we shoot very little free throws against St. Peter's and lose. And so that to me just shows right there, like looking forward to this, looking into the future for this NCAA tournament, you really don't know what you're going to get from game to game. And so, just like St. Peter's and just like Northwestern, even though we maybe didn't get, the game officiated ideally how we would have liked, considering how physical the opposition was and how some calls, certainly another officiating crew may have called fouls on. In both those games, we still had opportunities to, not turn the ball over as much and step up and hit some shot. Both those games we had ample opportunities for guys to step up and hit some shots that if they go in, change the complexion of the game, and you still win the ball game, even though you maybe didn't get the friendliest of whistles. So, this year in March, hopefully we get a lot of friendly whistles, but if we don't, hopefully we're able to have guys come through and make winning plays that supersede any sort of unfriendly whistle.
Well, and I think the St. Peter's game has this team prepared for that moment, because it is. I said it after the Northwestern game. It is coming. That Northwestern game will happen in the tournament, so they might as well just get ready for it. As the famous clip that they always play, Boiler Ball plays it, fans play it all the time, where Matt Painter's talking to I think it was Isaac Haas and the guys in the huddle, and he's like, "Hey, this game isn't for the weak." Because they were getting upset that they were getting fouled and not getting called for it. And they're just going to have to take that mentality into every game and not depend on what the crew is going to do as far as officiating, because I think it's less about the crew and more about the moment. I think the crews can get lost in the moment. It's the energy of the crowd, the energy of the sideline, the benches, the coaches going crazy. Certain coaches will, like, I like Matt's demeanor, and I've learned to appreciate it and respect it. There's times where I wish he'd just go crazy on the refs, but I know that's not who he is. There's other coaches that'll just work a ref all game long, like Tom Izzo. Sometimes they'll get teed up, which ends up being the detriment to their team. So I think there's a balance when it comes to that. But at the same time, to my point with the ref crews, the Northwestern game, I felt like they just got lost in the moment, where it's just such a hostile crowd. It's just the focus is different. The St. Peter's game, I felt like was the same thing. When they got all the whistles against Texas, it was a predominantly Purdue crowd. There was very minimal Texas fans there to make a big huff about a call they felt they should or shouldn't
certainly
have gotten.
Certainly very like neutral. So yeah, probably slightly pro Purdue, but definitely not hostile the other way, right?
But the St. Peter's game, it was the entire stadium was against Purdue, with the exception of the Purdue fans sitting behind the Purdue bench. I mean, it was a hostile environment because everybody was. I mean, they were just a cool team. If I hadn't been, if we hadn't been wearing our heart in our sleeves for Purdue, we would have been cheering for St. Peter's if they were playing anybody else. It was a cool story. It just sucked it happened to us. So they're just going to have to brace for that moment, because they are every time Zach Edie runs out that tunnel, he is David, or he is Goliath, and the other team is David. I don't care what their ranking is when the season's over. A guy like that coming out the tunnel, he's the big dog. Glenn Robinson was the big dog. Now he's the big dog, and they got to just eat and not worry about it. I know that's easier said than done at times because it has a big effect on the game. but that's just my observation of it.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think, unfortunately, officials are human, and they sometimes, I think, get caught up in the emotion of the fans in the arena, positively or negatively. And so, like, in both of our situations that we just kind of referred to there with the Northwestern game and the St. Peter's game, both those situations are the arena was very anti-Purdue because of either playing an official road game like Northwestern or a game like St. Peter's where they're the underdog. Every other fan in the arena, of course, was rooting against Purdue. I think if the officials maybe get caught up in that, and you're less likely, in Purdue in this case, to maybe get a friendlier whistle. And so that's why I do think it's so paramount for Purdue to, finish the season on a strong note, hopefully secure a 1 seed, hopefully get a 1 seed as close to home as possible, because if you do that, you hopefully never end up in a situation where the crowd is, 80 or 90% against you because you have a good, a large contingent of Purdue fans there providing support for you. And that way you don't get stuck in one of those 80 or 90% against you crowds that may affect an officiating crew in a negative way against you. So,
and I think they'll have that. I mean, last year was a unique thing. No one knew the 15 seed St. Peter's was going to get to the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 where they're
from
playing
Philadelphia,
they're playing in their backyard. I mean, that just was happenstance. Right. This year they're going to be a high seed no matter what they finish, and let's hope they finish as a 1 seed. But it's unlikely that particular situation happens again. But I mean, I think last year has them prepared for that moment. And the other part about it that I felt like was a good silver lining is in that hostile environment against Northwestern, Zach Edie continues to stay out of foul trouble, which is paramount for this team when those moments do come in the tournament in March. Because if he just continues to stay out of foul trouble, that's the worst case scenario for Purdue. The ref thing is going to happen, but the worst case scenario is that Zach Edie can't be on the court because of foul trouble. If he can continue even in these crazy games, where there's the physicality is at a premium, where he can just keep staying out of foul trouble and staying in the fight, because that opens up everything else for the rest of the team. So I think Zach Edie is showing a lot of poise. I know he had some tough turnovers at the end, but at the end of the day, just his presence on the court is huge. Even if he makes a mistake here or there, you have a better chance winning with him on the court than without. I think that's, goes without saying.
For sure. I mean, that's going to be pivotal, of course, when the games matter most, that Zach is able to play as many minutes as possible. And, he, as you said, he's done an amazing job this year of not fouling. I think, some of that, stuff that was gaining some traction there for a while about like, how come this guy never fouls? Like he's 7'4". Like if I was playing against my son upstairs on the little tyke soup, like would I have to foul him that much to be successful? No, he's a lot smaller than me. So like, I know that's not a perfect analogy, but in seriousness, like when you're that much bigger than everybody, you don't have to like come with the same aggression to block a shot. Like, Brandon Newman got called for a foul. Like he came and like really tried to like block a guy's shot at Northwestern, and it looked like maybe it was clean. But, he had to come in there, of course, and like use all of his might to try to like block the shot. Like Zach's so big, a lot of times he's just able to just go straight up and just use his size and not have to come at people with all the physical aggression that a smaller player has to. And so a lot of his ability to not foul is, of course, his experience, but also, the way he's able to now like control his body, utilizing the advantages he has to not have to foul. So
now the one more question I have, and then I'll let Kraig take it away. You're right there next to Matt Painter, and he's kind of hinted and even outright said in the postgame pressers, calling out the refs for, the treatment for Zach Edie. We heard Izzo trying to go the other way with him, but Matt Painter specifically, I feel like we're at a tipping point. Is he going to get teed up before the year's done? I thought it might happen at the Northwestern game, but I feel like we're getting to that point where, he's sent enough letters, made enough calls in the background during the week. Like at some point, you got to put your foot down and stand up for your guy during the game. I know he doesn't do it, but I want to see it. I want to see it so
The
bad.
only
because
chance I would think of Payne getting teed up this year would be like if we're down 25 with like 5 minutes left and the game's out of reach and something, and it's boiled up. Obviously, if we're down 25, probably a lot of bad things have happened. And so that would be the only time, because then he would like feel comfortable getting the tee, knowing it's not going to cost us in the game from a win-loss standpoint. But any game that's in the balance, as he kind of said on the coaches show last night, he's not going to want to put our team at a disadvantage as far as getting the technical. So,
and in that post game or the radio show, Braggs, he essentially said the only reason he would get a technical would be to make fans who want him to get a technical feel better about them.
I didn't hear the show yesterday, so I wish I would have, because I'm glad this was addressed. I get it.
He said he won't do it because the only people that does any good for is the fans to feel better about themselves. It doesn't do any good for the team. It doesn't do any good for him. That type of thing.
Do you agree with that, Bobby? I don't. I think when you're John Calipari or somebody else, he is that stature of a coach now, and I get he is so. I respect his craft. I respect the way he approaches the game as a coach, but and I'm not asking him to change. I just know, like we talked about, it's human nature, and you got to flex on these guys a little bit. And he's good at letting them know as they come up and down the court and making his point. But just like Zach Edey, if Zach Edey were to get mad at his teammates, doesn't it have a more of an effect because he's so quiet all the time? And Matt Painter, if he were to just lose it one time, I feel like that holds more weight than Tom Izzo or Brad Underwood, who cry after every single possession. It does hold weight. I respectfully don't agree. I understand why he won't do it. He's a greater coach than me, but he's a better man than me too, because I would have already lost it on a few crews this year. But do you agree with that, Bobby? Or do you see my point as far as it holding more weight if he were to, put the cables on a guy at one time?
I mean, Payne needs to be who Payne is. Like he shouldn't try to be someone he's not. But I mean, I agree with you. Like if he did lose it on somebody, like it would be like a whoa moment for sure, because he's not a guy who's constantly, on the officials left and right like some other guys. So yeah, it would certainly have a big impact, but like it'd be all hindsight 2020 depending on how the game went. Like if we came back or something, then it'd be like, oh wow, he galvanized the troops. But then if they'd made both free throws and then we stunk the rest of the way, it'd be like, oh, that tee really set Purdue back. So like, I mean, some of that stuff is so much hindsight 2020. But if something completely egregious happens, in a big moment and Payne loses it, like he's lost it before. Like it's not like he's never got a tee before. Maybe I'm not sure how long it's been since he got his last one. He got one my senior year when we played Blake Griffin in Oklahoma in the Madison Square Garden. Because that's a funny story. Robbie and I always joke about with him, and he doesn't really remember it this way now, but we're like dead certain. So we lose a heartbreaker in overtime to Oklahoma. And Oklahoma, surely enough, shoots like they shot like 40 some free throws and we shot like 6. It was something crazy, but they had a massive free throw discrepancy. And Payne got a tee in overtime, like at the very end, once the game had kind of got out of reach a little bit. And after the game, he's in the locker room and he was like, you guys gave such a great effort. He's like, you guys got, screwed out there, yada, yada. And then, seems like he was all like for us. And, we didn't get a fair shake out there. And then we get back the next day and we go in for film session. And the coaching staff at this point is like already watched the film back or whatever and prepared for the film session. And he comes in like hot, like, I was wrong. You guys messed up all these, starts going through all the areas where we messed up and didn't follow the scout report and didn't play hard enough and all that stuff, and starts going at us. And basically we were like taken aback, right? Because we thought, we were like on the good side coming out of the game, considering what he had said for us the night before in the locker room. So it was kind of a funny where he turned the tables on us. But that was a tough film session. But so he's, obviously that was when he was a little younger, used to get a little hotter. That's another thing, another area Robbie.
And just as we're talking, while we were talking about this, Coach Juwan Howard for Michigan got teed up literally while we were talking about this, and they're down 10. Looks to be about to be down 12.
If it galvanizes the troops or not.
Yeah.
No, I get it. And like I said, I get it. Close games, we've seen where it's hurt the teams. I don't know. I'm
Hey.
not trying to be smarter than Coach Painter.
You catch more flies with honey, Braggs. Catch more flies with honey.
I'll just strangle the honey out of you. No, it's all right. Let's just do a couple more with Bobby. He's been on for we're gonna be at 2 hours if we keep going, but
I got a real serious one for him.
all right, real serious.
So you said you snuck and you kind of did the dinner early on Friday night. As a Lafayette guy, I got to know what's your go-to place when you're taking the honey out to a really nice restaurant in the Lafayette area?
Feel free to say Mad Mushroom.
Yeah, we got some cheese sticks and pepperoni and something.
But you do love the cheese sticks. You do love that.
I've had many cheese sticks after a fun night at Harry's. That has certainly been a lethal combo in the past. Let's see. We went to East End Grill.
That's my favorite. That's my favorite, Bobby.
Yep. They had two specials. My wife and I got I had a ribeye and she got a mahi-mahi. And they were both delicious. I sampled a little of her fish, and it was just a wonderful evening. Yep.
Good. Yeah, that's one of my go-to. I got 2 or 3 in the area. That's one of my favorite for steak dinner, fish dinner type place.
Absolutely.
Pizza place is always Mad Mushroom though.
Hey, the wings at Big Woods are very good too. I know that's like a quick spot by the stadium, but Mad Mushrooms, our guys here, will continue to give them shameless plugs. Use the promo code BITS for 15% off. Bobby,
I think the promo code's not Brags.
Well,
Bits, Brags in the stands.
Bits is Boilers in the stands.
Oh, my bad.
We're transitioning the name of the show. You know,
Hours in the
Brags
stands.
in the stands is the network. It's something I'm very proud of that I've built here for the last 3 or 4 years, whatever it's been now. And, you know, what we've done now, it's really started to take off while you've been away here, Bobby, for a little bit. Certainly in the last month and a half.
Guys,
and we appreciate it. I know you tune in, listen to us. Joe Jackson and Aiden Kunst from their Feed the Post podcast. They join us for every post game. They do phenomenal work, and I think they're just such a great mixture for what we're doing here. And the viewership just continues to grow with every game. Live viewers for post game shows. It's really exciting to see so many people tune in and interact in the chat, good or bad. You know, I know I had to get hot with a guy earlier, and I'm going to give Icy Mike some shit here in a minute. But we appreciate everyone tuning in, and it has been a lot of fun. And Bobby, you've obviously been a huge part of what we do here. You've shown us a lot of support here over the last few years, so it's exciting. And I know when you're in the depths of the Big Ten season, it gets harder to come on. But anytime you do, we always appreciate it. And I'm sure we'll be able to squeeze you in at some point once, you know, we get into March, hopefully. But we certainly never try to push it with you. But, you know, either way, thank you, as always, for your support. It's been an exciting year, and we look forward to your coverage with what you do with Rob Blackman. You two are as good as it gets, calling the games, doing the pregame and postgame shows you guys do. And, you know, I think this still is setting up to be a really special year. Nothing that's happened over the last 3 games changes that, in my opinion. I mean, to me, the worst thing they could have done is win out, you know, like before the IU game, you know, and you know me, I think they can win every game they play in, you know, and I sometimes trick myself into believing they will. And then when they lose, it's like, what do we do with our hands? We don't even know what we're doing here. It's like Talladega Nights. I get confused, but I think these are good tests. This team has shown a lot of poise, you know, and I think the losses are going to help them more than it hurts them, but nothing guarantees, you know, the dreams we all have of a Final Four national championship. It's just got to play out, and you got to hope the cards fall where they may in the right way. So, Bobby, we appreciate your time here tonight. We'll let you get to bed, get back to your lovely wife and family, and happy Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
You know, and thanks as always for coming on.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, Bobby. Good to see you again.
Well,
Thanks,
and before
folks.
you go, Bobby, I mean, now that we are, like I said, somewhat transitioning to what we call the shows for Boilers in the stands, we need you to give us a little promo video where you do the I'm Bobby Riddell from Purdue men's basketball.
Yeah, I gave you that
whatever you
Brian
want to say.
Stands last year, but
right. But now we need new ones. So I'm gonna let it rip on 3, 2, 1.
Hi, I'm Bobby Riddell from Purdue Men's Basketball Radio, and you're watching Boilers in the Stands.
Bang. Appreciate you. All right, go to bed. Have fun in Maryland. We'll see you here real soon.
All right, bud. Take it easy.
Yep, get that 25th Big Ten championship. That'll be the next time you come on when they clinch that. We'll try to make it work. All right, he throws up the 3 ball. All right, have a good night. And we'll get him some money here soon. All right. We got Icy Mike in the chat. He's one of our most loyal supporters, and we love him. But man, is he has been, I've been waiting to get on his ass. He's yelling about everything in the chat. Everything. I should have used that star like we talked about to highlight some of these, because he's been saying all sorts of stuff. He's getting me riled up. He didn't like when we talked about the court storming. He didn't like when we were talking about the refs. He made this point earlier, Kraig said, as a lifelong Purdue fan, a Gene Katie stan, Glenn Robinson is his favorite basketball player of the 1990s. Don't you think we are being insanely whiny about this season? Kind of irritating? Your thoughts, Kraig, before I unleash on this man.
I'm not sure what Glenn Robinson has to do with our whininess on this season. I think maybe there's something to say about the fact that we don't hear it from Painter. The fact that Painter adamantly will not complain about the refs. He'll allude to it a little bit, but he won't really complain about it. And we would see Katie do it in the game. We would see Katie go after refs in the game. We would see Katie complain about the way calls went in post-game press conferences and that type of stuff after the game. So maybe there's a little bit of we don't hear it from the coaching staff here. So we feel like maybe we got to say something ourselves a little bit more. Not really sure. I'm going to let you tee off, though.
Nobody's whining here, Mike. We are analyzing the game. We're going to touch on everything. And I can't remember the other guy's name that I teed off on, crying about how we're talking about the court storming. But you know what? These are aspects of that. Mason Gillis, literally, you could either say he aggressively shoved someone or he outright decked the dude. And maybe the fan deserved it. He probably did. I really don't care. But at the end of the day, if you think we're not going to talk about those things when they happen, you're wrong. We have to. We have to talk about it. I of course, we want to focus on the team, and we do that every post-game show. And in these midweek interviews, we try to focus on the game on the court. But when a coach grabs Fletcher Lawyer, and we don't know about it until well after the post-game show, we're going to talk about it here today. So I'm not the first. I said it on the post-game. I'm not going to be the guy that goes after the refs after every post-game show. After the Northwestern game, it did feel significant because there was just so much physicality in that game. But there is no whining, at least here at Boilers in the Stands. Now, the Boilers fan base, are they tough? Yeah, they're tough. I follow them on Twitter. Obviously, being someone that knew a player personally for the last 5 years, come through this program with Sasha Stefan, they were tough on Sasha to end his career. And he had an illustrious career with Purdue for a guy that was a 3-star recruit from Crown Point, Indiana. And he finished his career. He hurt his finger against Wisconsin, and he'll never admit, even to me, that it affected the way he played at the end of the year. But I watched every shot he took since he was a freshman in high school, and I can tell you that I felt like the finger was affecting his shot. And Purdue fans dragged him, to end his career. And it was hard for me to sit back and not be like this defensive mother on Twitter like we're seeing with other mothers of recruits going to other schools and curse out some of the fans like I wanted to. There are very whiny fans in the Purdue fan base. There's whiny fans with every team of every sport. I deal with it with Chicago Bears fans. So you comes with the territory. And I just think when it comes to a team that A, has high expectations because they are good, and B, has this monkey on their back, this curse, this demon they have to slay, which is not having been to a Final Four since 1980, haven't won a national championship, that they have to overcome these things because Purdue fans are waiting for the worst thing to happen to them. It's a lot like Cubs fans. I dealt with this as a Cub fan. The Bartman moment, we all lost it. We stopped focusing on the game. We're mad at this fan in the stands. And that comes with the territory with a team that always seems to have something go wrong to end their year. So, yeah, there are some fans that you get more of a reaction out of them when they lose than when they win. This team is 23-3. They've lost 3 games. And for some fans, every time they lose, it's like the end of the world. When Kraig said in the post-game show against Northwestern, we got to have some perspective here, guys. Nobody expected them to be as good as they are. Now that they are, now we're going to hold them to this standard that we didn't have to start the year. That's not how we're approaching this. Of course, we want them to win a final, get to the Final Four, win a national championship, win a Big Ten title in the regular season. And if they fall short of that with the lead they've had, of course it's going to be disappointing, and we're not going to sugarcoat it. But at the same time, there will be perspective on this broadcast. So I don't know who you follow on Twitter, but that's not how we roll here at Boilers in the Stands. So maybe there's some whining going on in some of the segments you're reading, but here we don't whine, we analyze. And yeah, sometimes I might have a shot or two of Fireball. I didn't today.
That's just, I mean, I was with you all the way up into the Fireball. Like there is no reason in this world that anybody should ever take a shot of Fireball ever. And with that said, I'm assuming we're never going to get a Fireball sponsorship at this standpoint, but it is what it is. Yeah, I'm with you. And there's parts, and we haven't had to deal with it this year, right? When you look at Purdue fandom, when you start off the year and you go that long with only 1 loss, everybody tends to get along. Now we've had 2 in the last 3. People are going to start to come up with, there's a 20,000 couch coaches out there that think they know what's best, and everybody's going to come at it from a different angle. And that's fine. That's part of what we're doing here. We're pitching stuff back and forth. We're bringing fans in on what their perspective is. That's what they do on the coach's radio show. People call in and ask questions about different things like that. That's fine. That's what makes all this go, and that's what makes us all fandom in general. But there's a way to handle that without going at each other and going over the top or going at players and that type of stuff.
And I think it's just a hedging thing. Fans that just always want to be pessimistic, especially for teams that fail most of the time in their lifetime, like Cub fans or Bears fans. I've seen it with that, and now I'm seeing it with Boilers fans. They've lost a couple games now that remind them of some of the losses they had last year, and now they're like, oh, they're going to blow it to an 8 seed in the second round. Now I can already see it coming. You know what? That could happen, but all you're doing is trying to make yourself feel better by saying it and putting it out there, because it's a flip of the coin. The last 2 years, they've had no better chance to win a national championship than these last 2 years' teams, last year and this year. They have the makeup to do it. Will they? That is yet to be determined, and it takes a lot of, ifs and a lot of luck. And yeah, it's the I told you so. And it's hedging. I'm just going to say this. If I end up being wrong, great. And if I end up being right, I can say I told you so. Exactly. That's exactly all. It's hedging. So, there's no whining here. We're going to enjoy this season for what it is. Kraig and I thought they'd be, 5th in the Big Ten, somewhere around there. They're first in the Big Ten. They're 23-3. They're in a great spot, and we're excited about that. And we're going to keep giving you top-notch coverage with great interviews. We've had assistant coach here tonight with Jared Wulbrun. We've had even the basketball manager, Jared Harder, Ryan Klein, Rafael Davis, the head coach, Matt Painter, former players, Chris Kramer, Sasha Stefanovic, Fletcher Lawyer, Ethan Morton, David Jenkins Jr. This is what we're doing here. And we're going to keep giving you great post-game coverage with
and
Joe Jackson and Aiden Kunst. And Mike can keep making fun of my shirt. That's the other thing he's been doing all night, Kraig, is making fun of my shirt.
well, dude, it is like 58 degrees outside, man. I don't know.
Well, I did just put on a shirt for the show, okay? I had a short sleeve shirt on. I figured I'd put something on. I didn't feel like going up and getting the Purdue attire.
I'm
But if
kidding,
you-
man.
I'm seeing people.
I got
in
made
chat
fun
saying-
of. I got made fun of for my cup the other day. So like,
And then people are like,
fair
I gotta get more Bragg's memorabilia for the background. Look, I do a lot of different coverage. So I cover the Chicago Bears. I gotta have some different Chicago things. Got the Purdue flag up. I got a couple. I got right here. I got a signed Jaden Ivey jersey for my guy Jaden there. Bang! I'm gonna frame that eventually. And of course, I got my guy Sasha signed there. We're gonna get that framed up. But I gotta buy it. I gotta buy the frame and do all this stuff.
Yeah.
Then I'll get it up. I'll put it up and change the backgrounds for each show. That's the other thing. I see Mike busting my ass about my background and my shirt. He's got me off my game tonight, Kraig.
I'm sorry, man. But the other thing is about that Northwestern game, like nothing that we talked about there related to Fletcher Lawyer, related to the court storm, stuff like that. We damn well know that had no impact on the game, on the outcome of the game. But those are things that still need to be talked about. Player safety needs to be discussed. It was something that's been out in Twitter sphere and rest of social media the last couple of days. The Fletcher Lawyer thing came to light after that. I personally talked to an assistant D1 basketball coach today who had seen the video and said that's a technical every day, all day, and how it didn't get called was beyond them. Those are things that we're going to bring up and talk about because they're interesting. They're things that are going around and need to be discussed. So anyway, boom.
We'll keep having fun with it, guys. We appreciate everyone tuning in. I see Mike, and he's been sending me some pictures. He's got a sweet Purdue jacket. He's got the good gear. I'm still working my way up with some gear, trying to get, in the inventory. So, I'm sorry, I wore the quarter zip. I don't know. I was getting made fun of this quarter zip on CHGO too tonight, when we did our Big Ten show on there. So it's like, Walter Williams, a good friend of mine. He's a Michigan fan. It's on the commercial break. But they were like down 12 when Juwan Howard got the tech, and it's at commercial break. But I'm pretty sure it's either a 2-point game or it's tied right now after Howard got the tech. So I'm not saying it correlates, but they all of a sudden, fire got lit. Just saying. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. So, I don't know. This has been a lot of fun. I'm nervous for Thursday. It's a tough place to win at Maryland.
Yeah.
We barely beat them at Mackey. I'm hoping somebody reminds Zach Edie that the head coach for Maryland said that TJD was the best player in the country. He was quoted before the IU game saying that. So, I'm hoping somebody reminds Zach of that. So he, because I know sometimes he doesn't get off to fast starts. Maybe that'll inspire him to get off to a fast start. I know he doesn't need that to get amped up, but if somebody sent it his way, it wouldn't be the worst thing that would happen.
Right. I mean, that game's obviously concerning just because they pushed us at home. They do play a very intense defensive style. I think they're 27th in KenPom and defensive efficiency. If we look at like the 5 teams that we've played that are in that top 30 to 35 range, 3 of those 5 teams we played are the teams that we lost to. So on the road against one of those types of team, it's going to take a really strong effort. It's going to include not turning the ball over. It's going to include shutting Young down, or at least limiting him getting to the paint, and Zach playing smart and staying out of foul trouble. Unlike you, I don't want Zach to see that clip because I like really calm and relaxed Zach. Zach that gets super amped up, I think maybe gets a little over aggressive, and that's where we might get into some foul trouble early. So I like the calm, relaxed Zach that just takes his time, sets up, and shoots that little hook shot.
I mean, at one point in the second half, he was taking it personal, and I thought he was using it in a positive way. And then all of a sudden, at the end of the game, he just started chucking the ball in the stands and turning the ball over on doubles. Some of which you could argue maybe he was getting fouled, maybe not. I don't, because that's the other half of it. Somebody pointed out in the chat, like, yeah, they've had a lot of turnovers, but how many were on fouls that should have been called? I think that's a fair question to be asked, at the very least.
Yeah,
a handful.
I'm sure there's a couple that way. Maybe a couple that go the other way too. I've done as much complaining. I don't like to complain about officials or fouls either, and I've done as much as I'm going to do for it for the night.
Oh man, it's been crazy the last 3 days. That's all I see on Boilers Twitter across the board. I think we're all kind of at our wits' end with the whole thing. But no, this game is not for the weak, as Matt Painter said, and I'm going to continue to say. And they have to just battle through it no matter what, and I'm sure they will. They have a good mentality. I'm excited to see how they come out Thursday. We'll
brick
be
by
doing
brick.
Well, see, I do the brick by brick with the Bears, but I don't want to say brick by brick with the Boilers because I heard it was a slogan you guys used back in the day, and the team ended up not being good. Riley from Riles from Boiler Up Beer Down Boiler Up Beer Down said that to me a couple months ago. And then also, when you shoot a brick, you miss the shot. So I don't want to say brick by brick, but Ken TD Rand says, according to Ken Palm, Purdue has 10 quad one wins. Yeah, I mean, they have one of the...
Ken Palm doesn't have anything to do with quad one. It's net rankings that are quad one, quad two. So
okay. Well, I mean, we reached the 2-hour mark, one of our longest shows of the year, but I thought some really good stuff with Jared, and then we wanted to get some of the more critical questions we didn't want to put Jared on the spot for Bobby. And then I wanted to yell at Icy Mike to end the show. But I love you, Icy Mike, and we appreciate your support to what we're doing here. And even the guy that I yelled at earlier, I can't remember his name anymore. That's fine.
I think it was Jonathan.
John, whatever. That's fine. We all get a little hot here. That's fine. I appreciate everyone in the chat. We're all just passionate about our Purdue Boilermakers, and at the end of the day, we all want the same thing, and that is championship glory from the regular season and beyond into March. So I think that wraps things up, especially since Kraig's starting to freeze up a little bit. You're fine. You're back.
Oh.
You're back. It was just for a second. John, we're going to shake on it. How's that sound? You know what? You can bust my balls in the chat. Icy Mike's been busting my balls all night long. But I'm going to give it back because in CHGO with the Bears, people bust my balls in the chat and I have to be nicer. But here, this is my house. This is our house, I should say.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get a little more hot here with you.
Was it Wilson, Adidas, or Nike though that they were busting?
Yeah, I don't know. And Dave Kovich from ISC Purdue actually was watching earlier, and they're going to be putting out a study that they've been doing, research stuff when it comes to – he sent me this graph as if my dumbass is going to understand what the hell any of this means. But essentially it's a breakdown of the 6 different balls they've used. I don't know if it's just this year or over the last 2 years. It looks like it's just for this year. And then he has the breakdowns of amount of games used for the 6 different balls, games played with those balls, the Ken Palm defensive average, the 3-point TR made. I don't know what does TR mean?
What's it? He sent it to me too. I'll call you later and explain it all.
Yeah, I don't understand any of this, but make sure you follow at ISC_Purdue, Indiana sports coverage, Purdue side of things. All the pictures you've seen here tonight, they're provided by them, and we appreciate their support here. I would have put it in, but I don't understand the graph. We'll let them explain it tomorrow. This is officially our Midwestern goodbye.
It literally just means 3-pointer, Greg. PTR.
But what's the TR?
Three-pointer.
Oh, well, we don't need that. With a TR, don't 3-point. You don't need the TR. Just 3-point.
I don't know.
made.
That's what
I don't think it does because
just read in context, Braggs. 3-pointers made, 3-pointers attempted.
Okay, we don't need the TR. The TR is what confused me.
All right,
Regardless,
we can have this conversation later.
Yeah, regardless, it's a real nerdy graph, and I'm sure all you nerds will enjoy it. My dumbass is never going to understand it, no matter how much you explain to me. Matt Painter wants us to end the show right now because it's 10 o'clock at night here. It's 11 o'clock on the East Coast time. So we appreciate everyone tuning in. If you've tuned in this long and listened to this much rambling, you obviously are enjoying what you're seeing on your way out, especially those of you in the YouTube chat. Please hit that like button. Subscribe if you haven't. If you're watching our show and you're not subscribed, I'm going to freak out on you like I did Icy Mike and the other guy. Other than that, please hit that like button. We appreciate everyone's support. Thank you again to Jared Wulbrun, assistant grad coach, assistant coach for Purdue men's basketball. And of course, our guy, Bobby Buckets, Bobby Riddell, doing things for the color analyst for Purdue men's basketball radio. They brought a lot of great insight here tonight. And thank you to you, Kraig, as always. And also thank you to our sponsors, Fan Bags, Cornhole, and Mad Mushroom. Any order for Mad Mushroom, 15% off if you use the promo code BITS. So make sure you use that promo code. Then they'll know where you're coming from and why we brought you there. And then you can get a deal on your pizza or your cheese sticks. Aside from that, I think I've brought out all the bells and whistles. So with that being said, I'm Greg Braggs Jr. Alongside me is Kraig Bowers, and this is Braggs in the Stands. Boiler up all day long, baby. We'll see you on Thursday for the post-game show.